Upon a rewatch, Dario Argento's 2009 film Giallo is much better than you might remember. The suspense is there, as is the amateur detective narrative and even the improbable friendship, which is akin to his earlier work. I'm the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. So I hope I haven't come across as smug with that opening, or even with the title, because maybe I've read too many reviews, or I've sort of let what the general internet public has to say about this film seep into my mind. My memory of first watching it was that I don't remember hating it, and I've watched it multiple times. I guess I just sort of had it in my head that this is one of Argento's modern day sort of nothing films, and I think I was kind enough to dark glasses on the previous episode, and apologies for there being such a gap between the two. Don't you worry, I've sorted that out. Akin in the sense there's a modern sensibility to it. It's like a very 70s aesthetic, or Argento 70s aesthetic, trying to masquerade itself as a modern film, and that film was okay, and it was. I'm very glad that it exists and all of that, but I guess there were elements of that reminded me of Giallo, and look, there's a lot of debate, I think. A lot of disagreement on what is Argento's best work. I personally have sort of mixed feelings about Tenebrae. Sometimes when I watch Phenomena, I love it. Sometimes I think it's not very good at all. Opera is one I'm not that impressed with, but a lot of people love it. But anyway, the point is quite mixed feelings. So maybe Giallo is a film that a lot of people love. I don't know, but there seems to be a general consensus that it's not very good. And sort of for the first 20 minutes, I thought my memory was correct. To be perfectly honest, in my view, it's a fairly uninspiring start. I think that I wasn't really. It doesn't really sort of suck you into the narrative very early, and obviously, that's a flaw of the film. But what I found, and well, I either forgot or I'd never appreciated the relationship between Enzo and Linda, as in Adrian Brody and Emmanuel Senior, if that's how you say it. That I guess I'd felt that the sort of reveal of the killer's face and just the general, probably not that particularly well-written nature of the killer had really taken away from that. And I'd never really been that interested in Enzo and Linda's relationship. But, to be fair, it's quite endearing, their relationship. It's not quite, the earlier relationships in Argento's work, but I don't think he's managed to do it at this level probably since then. And that's the thing. Like, Argento is very, very well noted for his for his style, for his excess, for his gore, for his use of color, all of those cliches. But as I've probably said about 50,000 times on this podcast before, I really don't think he gets enough credit for his character work. So look, I might, as you can probably tell, this one's not as scripted as the past few episodes. I'll go through maybe section by section. I've got it sort of playing through, and I'm moving through it on my TV as I work through it. One thing that was noticeable in this first section of the film, to my not surprise and I guess not even disappointment because I wasn't necessarily expecting that much. But there's no grabbing you immediately, I think, and it's unfortunate because you probably don't even think about it that much when you're watching early Argento Gialli, but he has this unbelievable ability to just grab you very quickly, or create a sense of sort of inevitable horror in a character, generally a young, attractive woman who we don't know, and we sort of we can feel very, very bad for very quickly because there's something so sinister about the cinematography, the obsessive, almost sort of autistic nature of the killers with the gloves, and the use of typewriters or whatever the case may be. Whereas, and he seems to have developed this, I would say, tedious interest in, you know, killers driving cars, or vehicles, as was the case in Dark Glasses with the van, and this one it's the taxi. There's something just a bit like, I think it's very simplistic, but there's something not all that sinister about a taxi or a van. And whilst I understand the purpose of that, um, the killers can be anywhere. It's a theme that he seems to have kind of tapped into slightly. Like there's some girls talking about sleeping with someone and we're never going to see him again, and there's some very sort of lame, fairly uninspiring dialogue about prostitution in Dark Glasses. But it sort of feels like it's trying to lean on um, a social comment that it isn't particularly committed to. So what it means is it's like, where it's almost sinister adjacent. It's almost interesting adjacent, I suppose, in a way where the film's trying to introduce us to these characters, but we know they're just going to be chucked away, and I don't know. Just there's something about the laziness and the nothing of their dialogue that just makes me disinterested. Um, and then eventually when Linda shows up, sort of 10 minutes into the film, by that point, I'm sort of going, I think we should have met her already. So it took me probably a further 10 minutes to really get any interest in her for whatever reason. And I think it's partly because we've already seen the pattern emerge, right? In fact, I think I do know what it is. We've seen we've just seen we're into the second process of Giallo or Yellow, whatever they call him. Um, he's abducted the second woman, and we've seen him sort of go through the whole process with the previous one. And now we see another woman get into his taxi, and it turns out to be Linda's sister and whatever. And so there's a reason for us to care, except the film hasn't really given us any reason to care yet because we don't know Linda and we don't really care about her yet. And why is the woman in this taxi any different to the one in the previous taxi that we saw? And that scene had a very clear sense of, this is an opening scene. This isn't the character you're going to follow. So when you sort of go through the same process again, it's like, okay, I guess I care about this one, but you haven't really given me any reason to, more than the previous one. Also, I mean, look, I understand that it's different. I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, well, this is different to how it used to be, so it's not as good. But it is different to how it used to be, and it sort of isn't as good. And by that I mean, when did it become acceptable? And it's about this time. It might well be this movie in Argento's mind to be like, oh, let's just sort of show you the killer for whatever reason. And it made me think, because I was actually I was going for my nightly walk, and I was watching it on YouTube on my phone with some headphones on. Very fun experience. But it made me think, and this is probably for someone who's done 49 episodes of this podcast and watched many horror films and all kinds of things, this is probably a slightly delayed realization, but that there's a specific kind of utility beyond the obvious in the the whodunit. And it's now the obvious is the whodunit. It's interesting. We want to know who did it. We want to know whether we're right. We want to know if we're finding clues. Blah blah blah. But when you essentially do a story in a whodunit style, but we know stuff about him, and it's not particularly clear why we know more about him. Unless I missed something. It's not clear to me why we would know more about this killer while the film is, progressing than we would have previous ones. So what it means is as they're sort of uncovering things, they're not particularly interesting because we already sort of know them. But it also means everything about the killer is sort of unmasked. We can't be shocked. It's a shocking opening, I think. Like some of the stuff that happens is very, very brutal. But then the problem is, well, there's not really anywhere to go with it. And this is the part of it that I got very, very surprised with. Because to be clear, I don't think that element, if I wasn't clear enough, I don't think that element of this film works at all. I think it undermines the sort of sinister nature of the killer. We know a lot about him. We know he's pathetic, and then he just sort of becomes more and more pathetic. And if you want to chuck in the stuff later in the film about, how he was bullied and stuff, I was like, yeah, but, I've already seen him murder people. Is it a sympathy thing? Is it this is how he became like this kind of thing? I don't know, and I don't particularly care. So not great killer work. There's probably some doppelganger stuff going on there because Adrian Brody plays both characters, him and the main detective. I believe I've read reviews and comments before that the performances are a bit flat. I mean, it's a pretty somber sort of story, so maybe that explains some of the flatness. But I actually really think it's quite interesting, and I'd never appreciated the ending at all that I'll get to in terms of like the ending of their relationship. There is a sense of it like blossoming, and then she's just angry at him at the end, which is sort of funny, but it is a little bit sad. However, again, another criticism, and I'll tie this one to Dark Glasses as well. It's two of let's call it post 2000 Argento films that, in my mind, actually have plenty of merit, but are very much undermined by their lead female character not really sort of being much of anything. She's sort of there in relation to an event happening, but what is Linda's defining characteristic? And it's that she is the sister of someone who's missing. She doesn't seem to stand on her own 2 feet at all, and it's sort of frustrating. And where the film sort of inverses itself in a way is that it puts information in front of you very early, and then tries to weave interest around that. And as I said, I don't think it works with the killer, but I think it really works, surprisingly well with Enzo's character, with Enzo, because I admit I'd never really cared about it all that much, and I think we're naturally, obviously, drawn to Linda because she's the most direct person, obviously affected by it. And the film's probably not that subtle about Enzo having a dark background or whatever. But I wonder if it puts a little bit of a cap on the sort of, what will we say, the significance of the detective in Argento's films. This might have even added an extra element to it that really hasn't been there before. And as it turns out, it's a sort of ridiculous scenario that he had seen his mother, as in Enzo had seen his mother being murdered as a child, and I believe he'd seen it happen in New York. Then he'd moved to Italy and seen the killer of his mother in some shop, and then he'd planned out his murder and I mean, he must have been like 14 or something. Then he murders the guy somehow, even though the guy is very big and is very aware of him being there, but somehow manages to murder him. And then the inspector guy, whatever, detective guy, sees him and decides to clean him up, and turn him into a detective. Now, the thing about it is, it is relatively interesting, I think, but it's sort of only in that moment that you're like, oh, this film is about Enzo. I know that simplistic films are about a lot of different characters and whatever, but you think that the film is about Linda, right? It's about her, and maybe it's about some uh, nothing social commentary on yellow people or whatever, but as in jaundiced people. But then it's like, well, we never really go anywhere in particular with Linda, which is a bit disappointing. And then it's like, no, this is actually about Enzo's arc, and that's probably the most disappointing element of this film. Um, there isn't an arc for anything really. Um, you might say that we get an explanation for why Enzo is the way he is, but he's just sort of a quietish, jerkish sort of cop. It isn't that interesting. Um, but look, the element of it that is interesting is the way the film actually manages to build some kind of interest in these two characters. But before I get to that, I want to note the title and all of that. And again, this is a flaw. I said I was going to defend it, and I'm going to defend it. Don't worry, I'm getting there. The problem with this film being called Giallo, there's a couple of obvious ones. One, and I remember when I discovered it when I was a budding Argento fan 10 or 15 years ago, probably close to 15 years ago, sadly. And I was aware of his older stuff, and then I was looking through his catalog, and I saw he's got this film called Giallo. That's pretty cool. Bought the DVD. It's cover looks cool, all of that. And you're hoping it's hope that it's going to be like a cap to his Giallo life, or return to Giallo form. But the problem is twofold. One is it's so self-referential that it probably undermines itself by its very existence. If you made a spaghetti western in 2009 and called it Spaghetti Western, it would inevitably be a parody of itself, even if it was really good. And I think Giallo, it doesn't really lean into the fact that it's a parody of itself at all, and yet it sort of becomes that by the very fact that it is called that, but also because, and it's very, very, it becomes very, very clear that when it's like, oh, they call him yellow, they pick on his yellow skin, as in the killer guy, it's like, if a really good director, or if anyone was sitting down to be like, I want to make a movie, I want to write a story about a killer, and they need a backstory, right? I don't think the first thing you're going to is, oh yeah, they were bullied because they have yellow skin and liver problems. The problem is, because that's such a weak thing, it makes you go, is this the best they could come up with? Or is it an excuse to call the movie Giallo as a self-referential thing? And obviously it's the latter. And the problem with that is, because it's not a particularly good idea, it just ends up making the actual explanation in that sense a little bit weak. Now, nonetheless, I mentioned the flatness of the characters, and there was a point, because I must admit I'd sort of forgotten just how much of this film is these two characters. um, talking, moving around Turin. I think it's Turin. It's quite nice. I reckon Adrian Brody's got some really cool leather jackets and stuff. He's looking really cool. He's got his goatee. He's looking great. Um, Linda's looking great too. And I reckon after about 20 minutes of them being sort of doing stuff and talking a lot, it sort of made me. There was a bit where I went, okay, how much longer does this happen? And then it goes for another 5 or 10 more minutes. Like, oh, this is just the whole movie. This is what this movie is. And once I realized that, I was like, I can get around this. I can deal with this. Because to be fair, I don't think you can say, or I could be right in saying that the longer version of Deep Red is good because of all the extra nonsense that happens in it, and then say just on principle, this sort of lengthy character development is bad. Now, if it's badly done, fair enough, but as it turns out, I don't think it is. Now, you could argue that this method hurts not necessarily the pacing, but sort of let's say the expectations of a Giallo film. And frankly, it does. I suspect that's part of where the frustration and criticism of this film comes from, that there's a lot of reflecting going on. There's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of talking. And there's, films are shot in a certain way. They're crafted in a certain way that the film's telling you nothing scary is about to happen right now, right? And a very substantial portion of this film is that. We can all think back to the classic Giallo era of Argento, and we can even sense in those movies when that kind of scene that something terrifying is about to happen in is. But those scenes are not few and far between. They're quite often. And even when there's something horrible happening on screen in this film, there's a sense that we're sort of cutting away from the main development of the two main characters. Once you accept that that's what it is, it actually it reminds me of another Adrian Brody film, the Shyamalan movie, The Village, where once you accept that there's a lot of just sort of character development and stuff going on, you can deal with it. But anyway, I digress. I don't know if it's accidental, but it is interesting the way the film is not, let's say, upfront about the significance of Enzo, because it's like the film transitions, right? We're dealing with this trauma of Linda, and it's not so much about her sister. And I think because she becomes the investigator person, we're quite aware that her sister's not going to die, or at least she's not going to die until much later in the film. So to some extent, there's even a little bit of intention taken out of the scenes where her sister is in it, and at one point she's bullying Giallo or whatever, and he cuts her finger off. And even then, as horrible as that is to watch and hear, some great sound craft in this film. There isn't a sense that he's going to kill her. So again, that doesn't necessarily take the tension away. Well, look, it does to some extent, but the question is that the kind of tension that this film wants? I'm not sure it is. I wonder if it's like a big point of it is this character development, because we all look back at the classic era, and it's always, there's very specific memories. It's gore. It's a lot of awful stuff. It's atmosphere. It's sound. It's color. All of that. But unquestionably, in my mind, the reason that The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Deep Red are his two best films is because his characters are just interesting, and they're silly, and they're goofy, and you spend more time with them doing silly sort of stuff and looking a bit like they don't know what they're doing. But you spend so much time with them doing that you get to know them properly. And I think that's one of the things that makes Suspiria, in my opinion, lesser to those films. Obviously, it's great for other reasons, but because it's almost consciously the case that the characters are undeveloped in that film. But as we transition through Giallo, about halfway through, Adrian Brody's there stroking a knife, and it's like I don't know if Argento's ever done this. He's reversed, he's reversed the film in a way. In the case of Giallo, this film, suddenly it's, what if the psychological process was that the killer or someone with the killer mindset is actually the good guy? And it's a bit more interesting than like the rape revenge stuff where it's so easily explained. Now, again, the story is a little bit absurd, I think, as I've already explained. But, at the same time, I respect it. I respected it at about the halfway point of the movie where, like, wait, this is Enzo's arc. This isn't Linda's arc. This isn't the killer's arc. This is about Enzo. And I suspect, because I'd noticed in the past, I just for whatever reason hadn't cared as much. But I suspect the reason I hadn't really cared so much for the ending in the past was because I didn't really give a shit about Adrian Brody's character at all. But now I don't want to overstate it. Okay, this isn't Mark and Gianna from Deep Red. Mark? Yes, sorry, Mark. But it brings you to this point, right? That it's sort of, I didn't really care one way or the other, if there was some kind of love affair brewing, right? Maybe it seemed like there was, and then there's that moment where it seems like, she invites him to stay, and it seems like there's a sexual component to it, and he's like, nah. He seems to be aware of it, but he's got his consistent New Yorker face and gear, the whole, as in a kit, the whole time. He just leaves, and then she calls back, and then whatever, and then he like saves her life, sort of. But then there's the final showdown, where she's convinced that the killer's going to tell her where her sister is, right? And he just lets him die, and there's that awful scene of the killer holding on to the broken glass, and it's pretty unrealistic how long he manages to hold on with shards of glass just tearing his hands up. But he doesn't want to die. And then I guess they let him die or whatever. Well, they don't let him die, but there's nothing they can do because he's going to fall. Blah blah blah. And then Linda's just yelling at him at the end, like absolutely yelling at him, and you are so selfish, and it's like there's a part of me going, is this scene, have they really committed to this scene? Like, do they really care? Or like, is it brilliant? I actually don't know. I genuinely don't know. Okay? Because she's pacing. I'm watching it now. She's pacing around. They're covering up the body. And I reckon her acting here is great. She's got some really good, angry face acting in this scene. And Enzo's just there. He's trying to say, he wasn't going to tell you anything. He's a killer. And it's like, it's not even clear whether he believes it. Does he believe that? But then also, was it his fault? Like, the killer did have like a shotgun, and he was absolutely trying to kill them. But then at the same time, when she's saying he's selfish or selfish, there is also the sense, and it seems to be sort of painted on his face. There is a sense that he did want to just kill him regardless of whether we found the girl. And isn't that an interesting thought, right? That this sort of hero type character potentially was undone slightly by his sense of his need to his need to get revenge. And it's interesting because he is the one that's showing understanding to her, saying, I know what it's like to lose someone, but she isn't jaded because she hasn't lost someone yet. She just wants to save her sister, whereas Enzo wants to get some kind of cosmic justice for, even though he's already got, well, not justice, but he has killed the guy who killed his mum. And I think the other fascinating thing about it is the way this little relationship, it sort of steadily brews. Then they nearly have sex, and then they don't, and then she gets angry at him, and that's sort of it. The only problem with it, I think, is that it just falls probably a little bit flat. It's super interesting, I think. It's a really fascinating idea to be like the film almost. It's like the film is distracted by the relationship between the two of them, and then there's the final scene with the random cop that I don't think we've seen before, hearing about the girl. Hearing the girl struggling around in the car, and then there's an interesting enough final shot of her blood dripping down, and we presume that she's going to get saved. But like, what is it? Is Enzo and Linda? Are they just fighting at the end? Anyway, that's probably enough of my rambling. I hope it hasn't been too rambly. I haven't done many podcasts structured in this way, or should I say not really structured at all, for a while, but I have enjoyed it. And again, I mentioned earlier that I was, a little bit apologetic for the gap between podcasts. I'll give a brief explanation of where it's been at, and I think where we're going from here. And I am bloody excited, I must say. So it's been, I think, 3 or 4-ish months since the last one, which isn't good enough. I've been settling into a new house or new apartment, settling into married life, looking around for different jobs, blah, 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 and working on my book, my Italian horror book, which I'm pretty close to completing the first draft, and I've already started redrafting. Hopefully I can get that published. I've also recently been accepted into a PhD writing about Dario Argento. So congratulations to me. That's all very exciting. But what I want to say about that is I'm going to hold myself to account regarding podcasts because I've got a plan and I'm developing it. That will involve, I would imagine, weekly, at least bi-weekly podcasts, which they'll be starting over the next couple of months, but I'll have other podcasts in the meantime, where, because I'm going to be doing so much reading and so much stuff, that I need to keep good account of everything that I'm doing. And don't worry, it's not going to be completely boring. It's not going to be me just sort of talking in an overly academic and annoying way. I hope that that's not how I come across already. But I'll be doing all kinds of readings, reading books, watching movies, and here, I might see a reference to a certain movie that I've never seen before, and then I'll go see that movie, that kind of thing. But there'll always be something for me to be doing, and actually part of the process of my PhD, actually doing the podcasts are going to help a lot. So there's going to be a lot of content coming, and I'm really, really looking forward to bringing that to you guys. I have been getting just a steady little listenership, which I'm really happy about. I always sort of wanted to get it to the point where, even if I haven't put any content out for a while, that I can still get some streams, and that's been happening, which is really cool. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that I should get complacent. I should be putting more content and more episodes out, and I will be doing that as mentioned. And I'm working on a structure for a YouTube channel. I think I've mentioned that before, but I'm actually going to do it. But I've just got to tidy up my ideas. It might just be initially posting the existing ones here, but I might as in the existing ones from Spotify and wherever else it is. But I'll work on that. But nonetheless, there is going to be lots more content, lots more podcasts. Keep following me. Share it with your Italian horror friends. I'm really. I like to think that in a very, very small way, I'm contributing to the amount of media and content out there that's about Giallo films and Italian horror films, and I think that's really important because I think they're a very significant part of the history of cinema. And you know, I get comments occasionally, even on podcasts. I didn't even know that was a thing until I got a comment. Keep doing that. Keep giving me suggestions. I'd really like to grow this show. And yeah, keep tuning in. Listen to old episodes if you like, because that'll help me with the algorithmic stuff. But other than that, I've enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed returning to Giallo 2009. I'll play it by ear regarding the next episode. It could be another Argento film. I know some of the cannibal episodes have been popular. If you've got any suggestions, put them in the comments. Even if it's an obscure but still Italian horror film, put it in there. I'd love to make some new discoveries and watch some films that I haven't watched before and talk about them. Nonetheless, I've rambled enough. Join me for the next episode. I believe the next episode's episode 50, so I should do some kind of special thing for that, but we will see. And until then, I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this has been the Italian Horror Guy podcast.